Coming up on Destructoid, it's our full Mass Effect 3 review. Oh my god, it's here!
This episode of Destructoid is brought to you by Full Sail University.
Welcome to Destructoid. I'm Tara Long.
And I'm Max Scoville.
You know what day it is, Max?
It's a very special day.
It's a very special day.
It's a very special day.
Holy crap, it's Mass Effect 3 day!
Yeah, Mass Effect 3 day.
Mass Effect 3 day.
It's out. It's the game that we've been talking about like since our show existed, I think.
Yeah, I think it got revealed like a month after we started this thing.
Pretty much. This is sort of a big deal. Pretty
exciting.
exciting.
You guys have been looking forward to this for a while.
Yeah.
Just putting this out there before we even start our review. No spoilers, you guys.
No,
You'll
we're
find
cool.
no spoilers in here.
Yeah.
This is a spoiler-free, safe area.
You're safe here. But yeah, if you've been watching any kind of coverage or trailers or anything like that, we're not ruining anything. But if you're one of those purists who just wants to go in completely cold without knowing anything, you might be in the wrong place, and you probably just shouldn't be on the internet right now.
Yeah, you should just go lie in bed and cover your head with a pillow.
Yeah, just go
to be safe.
under some heavy piece of furniture. But yeah, so here we are. This is it. Obviously, reviewing Mass Effect 3 is kind of a tricky thing to do. As a sequel, it is an extremely iterative one. It's not like a massive reinvention or overhaul of the series like we've seen with, games like, GTA 4 or Fallout 3, but it does offer a lot of new material. It's not just like a map pack like, Call of Duty or something. But what BioWare has created with the Mass Effect series is sort of hard to describe in itself. I mean, the best comparison that I can make is that it's a hybrid of a traditional role-playing game and one of those HBO series that everyone's talking about because it's so thrilling. And everyone's like, don't tell me, I haven't seen the episode yet, It's really exciting, everyone gets stoked about it, and, honestly, the Mass Effect universe is one of the most carefully crafted and detailed works of fiction in recent pop culture history, and with Mass Effect 3, BioWare really doesn't pull any punches in terms of plot, characters, or, for lack of a better word, lore.
Yeah, I agree, and I think in a lot of ways, kind of the final chapter of trilogies is always the hardest to create because, the series has had time to get popular and build up this huge, dedicated fan base, and they're facing pressure from not only them, but just trying to conclude the trilogy in a way that pleases everybody, but they also want to make it accessible enough to be able to draw new people in, and it's clear that EA is really trying to kind of please everybody here, and a lot of times that doesn't really work, but I think in this case they pull it off really well. So obviously having played the first two games puts you at a little bit of an advantage. Importing a previous save starts you off with the level and skill points you were at when you completed Mass Effect 2, and of course you'll have the advantage of already being familiar with and hopefully emotionally invested in the characters. Although Mass Effect 3 does introduce a handful of new faces to the mix, it's really the returning characters and the relationships that you have with them that stand out. Maybe it's just because it's the last part of a 3-part series, but knowing that every choice that I make in the game is final, I have to say it adds a lot more weight to every decision that I made in the game.
Yeah. As far as gameplay goes, I mean, it's a game, obviously. I think it's safe to say that the gameplay's never really been the primary focus of Mass Effect. I mean, it's BioWare has made great efforts to make Mass Effect 3, appealing to fans of all types of games, but I don't think there's any denying that this has always been a narrative-heavy RPG first. It's a BioWare game. That being said, Mass Effect 3 really does make great strides in its efforts to have something for everybody. Mass Effect 2 fine-tuned the running and shooting mechanics from the first game, and Mass Effect 3 takes it a few steps further. It still plays like a loose, cover-based shooter, but with a few minor additions. When taking cover against certain objects, arrows will now appear on screen to show players that they have the option to climb over the object or roll to adjacent covers. Arrows will also appear on ladders and gaps that players can jump over. But, like I said, BioWare makes RPGs, and run-and-gun shooter mechanics aren't exactly their forte. The controls are decent enough that anybody can get through the game, but if you're expecting this game to suddenly play like a true shooter, you might be a little bit frustrated. There's also more melee combat now. Players can still pistol whip or bash nearby enemies with the butt of a rifle, but now holding down the melee attack will allow them to stab with the Omni Blade, which works pretty well when it works, but occasionally an enemy will just be fractionally too far to the left or right, and you'll wind up just doing this dramatic, epic stabbing motion at thin air. And it's a total nitpick, but I really wish that it felt more like a real-time attack in actual combat than it did like a quick-time animation.
When it does work, though, that thing is powerful.
Yep.
I'll tell you what, melee does some damage. But yeah, I actually think this is one of the few games that really manages to pull off both kind of the storytelling and gameplay aspects without really sacrificing one for the other. The storytelling is, in my opinion, far and away better than the previous games, but they've also made it a lot more accessible to this stereotypical shooter crowd. So they've added more abilities and choices to the different skill trees this time around, as well as a completely revamped weapon loadout menu that shows stats for each of your guns, along with 2 optional slots for any weapon mods that you happen to find while scavenging. Weapons are no longer restricted based on what class you are, and there are pretty much any kind of weapons and mods you can find to suit whatever style of gunplay you like. However, the more weapons you carry, the slower your powers will regenerate, so there's kind of a trade-off here. So if you're a tech or a biotic heavy class, like an adept, you probably only want to carry like 2 lighter weapons, or it'll seriously affect your power recharge. It is a nice feature though, and it kind of makes sense that BioWare would introduce a more customizable weapon system, you know, for the last big battle against the Reapers. It's also helpful when you consider that the enemies get harder as you progress through the game. So eventually you'll be in a room with like 5 of these tall-ass, shrieking banshee things. You know what I'm talking about. They will make you their bitch. Like, they will destroy you. But it's also really fun. Like, those big, giant, kind of mini boss battles almost, like, ended up being one of my favorite parts of the game. The only real complaint I had about the actual gameplay is that because there are so many options for cover on every battlefield, sprinting during a fight is next to impossible because every time you press A to sprint, Shepard like automatically takes cover behind the nearest object. And a lot of times in the heat of intense battle, that miscommunication can and will end up killing you.
Yeah, it's kind of silly. It's press A to sprint, examine, open doors, take cover, vault over stuff, jump, do somersaults. So you'll be like, Shepard, go over there! And he'll just kind of like roll across the room and huddle up next to something, which I think it could have used with some tweaking of the controls.
Now, another thing I was personally disappointed about, although I'm sure a lot of you will feel the opposite, is that all of the minigames have been eliminated. So whereas in Mass Effect 2 you could bypass circuits and match up code segments if you wanted to get credits, none of that is there anymore. Now you just find credits scattered around. They also changed up the planet scanning system, so you're no longer tediously mining for minerals and activity, which I'm not ashamed to admit that I actually enjoyed in the last game. But I like mindless, tedious activities. So now in Mass Effect 3, when you enter certain planet systems, you'll have the option to kind of scan the area around you, kind of like Doppler almost, but not, just by pressing your left trigger. And sometimes if you're in an area, this will uncover hidden fuel or salvageable resources, but it also comes at a price because every time you scan, it alerts the Reapers to your presence a little bit more. So if you scan too many times, they'll actually come in and invade the system while you're there and start chasing you. And if they catch up to you, it's game over. But if you can manage to make it back to the Mass Effect relay in time, then you are temporarily safe, but you can't revisit that planet system until you've completed at least 1 mission elsewhere. Kind of an interesting situation there. Though I do miss the mindless minigames.
Now, one of the big hot button issues that was leading up to Mass Effect 3 was the announcement that there were going to be like 3 different like play style difficulty settings. There was action, RPG, and story modes, each of which basically were supposed to streamline the game for a different type of player. Now, at first glance, this seems really dumbed down and simplified, but in reality, it's actually much more complex, and it probably makes Mass Effect 3 one of the most customizable games I've ever encountered. You've got the difficulty section in the options screen. It breaks down to narrative, casual, normal, hardcore, and insanity mode. This is all the different difficulty levels. Narrative is a really nice way of saying, you know, super, very, ultra easy for babies, but it makes sense because a lot of people just want to play the game for the story, and they're not interested in you know, playing it hardcore for the challenge. Now, on top of that, there are also some settings you can assign separately. Like for skill points, you can allow players to level up Commander Shepard and squad members manually, you know, to assign all the points themselves, or to only worry about Shepard, or for everybody to pick their stats automatically. Now, if that wasn't enough, there's also the option to either set conversations on, you know, standard BioWare RPG where you have dialogue trees and you pick whatever people are going to say to NPCs, or you can just make it so that every conversation plays out like a cutscene, which is sort of like putting your RPG on cruise control.
If you really don't like making choices, that's totally the option.
Now, I can see how this would sound unappealing to some hardcore gamers, but guess what? BioWare is trying to appeal to more than just the hardcore crowd. I mean, Mass Effect 3 can be played as an RPG, it can be played as an action game, or it can be just like an interactive movie. They don't dumb down the experience unless you want it dumbed down, and I really have to commend them for that because there really is, you know, a lot of choices there.
There really is something for everybody.
Now, speaking of dumbing things down, 2 of the most obvious additions to Mass Effect 3 were the online multiplayer, which we're going to talk about in a separate video, and Connect functionality. Now, at first glance, both of these seemed incredibly tacked on and might seem like desperate gimmicks to sell more copies or whatever.
Better with Kinect.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the Kinect recognition thing, quite frankly, it just works. It's really awesome. And it takes one of the most fundamental elements of gaming, shouting at your TV, and it incorporates it into the game. It's kind of cool. During conversations, every single dialogue option can be selected just by saying it out loud. And considering that this is a BioWare game, there are a lot of dialogue options. So, you know, it's especially handy during long-winded conversations where you're sitting there and you don't necessarily want to have the controller in your hand.
Or if you're doing something with your hands.
That's a very valid point, Tara. However, you will miss out on the interrupt options with the triggers, so there's that. Now, during combat, doors can be opened and objects can be examined and items can be collected simply by shouting the correct command, you know, pick up or examine or whatever. This is sort of silly because it takes fractionally more time for the Kinect to recognize your command than it does for you to press A. But where the voice commands really, really work is when you're commanding your squad or you know, setting up special attacks. In place of holding down one of the shoulder buttons and bringing up a a menu system to pick who's going to do that, now you can just shout out like shotgun, and either you get the front seat in the car or you equip your shotgun. It's cool. Or you can just be like Garrus, concussive shot, and Garrus will actually shoot his concussive shot at wherever you happen to be aiming. Like it's that simple.
Yeah.
There's a momentary lag, but in the heat of battle, it's actually more fun than opening up a menu and selecting stuff. However, on a more juvenile note, it's also really fun to mess with your Kinect. You can shout completely gibberish commands. I was shouting Taco Bell orders at Garrus. That was great. Sometimes you'll actually, elicit a reaction from squad members. I said, Garrus, come to my birthday party. And Garrus was like, I'm on it, Shepard. I'm like, sweet.
It's true. You were doing all this kind of stuff when I was playing and you first came in and you started shouting all these ridiculous things and then you cackled like a schoolgirl for about like 5 minutes. It was really funny.
It's really awesome.
It is. I have to admit, I was another one of those people who's skeptical about the Kinect functionality, and it is awesome. I didn't use it for everything. For the conversation options, it didn't work 100% of the time, and after a while I got sick of it. But for as far as commanding your squad mates goes, it's amazing. And it actually adds kind of a co-op-y aspect to the game, because I was playing with somebody and we were kind of switching off controllers. When he was playing, I could just shout and command his squad mates as he was like pointing at people and killing them. And so it was kind of cool in that sense.
There's that, but there's also the backseat gamer aspect of it. My roommate kept walking in and just going, lift grenade. And I'd be like, that was my grenade, man. You're like wasting my grenades, thanks. So.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed that. And in fact, like kind of all of the concepts that they introduced in the game that I thought sounded gimmicky at first, I really ended up liking. Like the multiplayer, for example, when people first heard about that, they were concerned that it would be shitty and tacked on, or that the single player might take a back seat to that. I can tell now that that's really not the case at all. The single player campaign provides just as much content as the previous ones, if not more. So very cool. We are going to take a quick second to thank our sponsor, and they're going to be back to wrap up our final thoughts of the game.
So you've tuned into our Mass Effect 3 review. I think it's safe to assume you're interested in video games, and why wouldn't you be? They're the culmination of all other mediums. But have you ever thought about creating them yourself? Now, whether you want to learn about programming, art, and animation, story creation, or even how to be a video game producer, Full Sail University has a degree program for you. Full Sail has a campus outfitted with professional-level game studios and labs where you can work with a team of peers to create a playable game from the ground up. Full Sail also offers an immersive online program that you can earn a bachelor's degree in game art or game design from anywhere in the world, and all Full Sail students also receive a laptop that is preloaded with professional-grade game industry software at a sweet institutional discount. Full Sail grads have worked on all kinds of titles, from Red Dead Redemption to Madden NFL 11, and if game design wasn't enough, Full Sail also offers a wide range of campus and online programs in all kinds of field related to the entertainment and media industries, including art and design, filmmaking, recording arts, entertainment business, and more. For more information, head over to fullsail.edu/Destructoid today.
You can go to Full Sail and become games journalist like us. We are journalists.
We are, right. Words good.
Right. Okay, moving on. So, Mass Effect 3, man. Wow, we've said mostly positive things about it so far, but there are a couple points that I think we should at least mention. Point number 1. The game is a tad glitchy. Not in like the game breaking or the hampering of your understanding of it kind of way. Just enough to make you go, huh, that seems a little weird, or seems like there should have been a pause there. Not enough to like affect your enjoyment of the game, but it's a little distracting.
At one point, this of course was after playing on my Xbox without turning it off for 13 hours straight.
Right.
At one point, I did have Shepard just repeat his line 3 times in a row. It was like, we should go over here. We should go over here.
Yeah.
We should go over here. And I was like, Okay, fine.
There were a couple awkward moments in there, but you know,
Yeah.
not anything game breaking. Secondly, and this one is a little bit more important, several Xbox users are currently reporting that their game will not allow them to cloud import their Mass Effect 2 save. So if you are having trouble with that, I think they're working on a fix right now. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. They actually had like a day one patch for this game, so I'm sure there'll be more. But other than that, I really don't have any more negative things to say. I mean, the bottom line here is that this is a great game. If you've been watching our show for any reasonable amount of time, then you know just how excited we've been for it. We've given it so much free promotion, it's ridiculous. And as someone who loves the hell out of Mass Effect 2, I really had no idea how BioWare planned to step it up for the third one, but after playing it, all I can say is this is really the first game in the series that I think will please just about everybody without sacrificing or alienating the really hardcore fans, which is a hard thing to do in this day and age.
Well, Mass Effect 3 for me had the same effect that Mass Effect 2 did. I spent the first few hours making fun of the characters for being a bunch of emotional weenies and cursing at BioWare for being a bunch of nerds who are more interested in creating a complex, believable universe than crafting a compelling story than, you know, catering to my juvenile desire to blow things up. And then suddenly, a few hours in, everything clicked, and I was suddenly emotionally invested in the game's outcome.
Yep, that's how it
now,
happens.
how you feel about Mass Effect 3 depends a great deal on how you feel about Mass Effect in general. Simply put, Mass Effect 3 is Mass Effect 2 version 2.0. I personally think that's a good thing, but if you hated Mass Effect 2, you might not think that's a good thing. If you haven't played any of the games, I would really recommend going back and playing at least the second game first. Mass Effect 3 will teach you how to play it, and it'll make an effort to get you up to date, but if you're late to the party, you know, you'll have way more fun if you play catch-up first. Yeah, I can absolutely see why some people don't enjoy Mass Effect, but I can also see why some people are so madly in love with it. If you're one of the people who's madly in love with it, I really doubt that Mass Effect 3 is going to disappoint you. You know, for better or for worse, BioWare has found their fan service sweet spot. They're just like, right there.
They totally found it.
You know, it's not necessarily the most thought-provoking, beautiful work of art that's ever been created in this medium, but it is overall, it's just an excellent finished product for game, for story, the overall experience, whatever. It's just remarkable. It's well done, and it's a shining example of video games as a storytelling medium. And I think in probably about 9 months, a lot of people are going to be, you know, putting Mass Effect 3 on their Game of the Year lists, and you know, it's way too early to tell, but when that time comes around, I don't really see myself arguing with people that much about it.
Yeah. It's probably on mine so far, but we're only 3 months into the year, so that doesn't really say
It's
a whole
a good game.
It's a great game. Bottom line, it is a great game.
Yeah, there is one piece of bullshit that I will say. In Mass Effect 2, playing as a male character, you could go into the ladies' restroom on the Normandy. In Mass Effect 3, you cannot do that.
That's some bullshit right there.
It is some bullshit.
2 out of 10.
2 out of 10.
2 out of 10.
But yeah, that's our Mass Effect 3 review.
Yeah. Everyone. It's not really a 2 out of 10. We loved it, but we're not going to give it a score because we don't do that. One thing we didn't touch on was the multiplayer, and that is because there is a whole other video review for that. So if you head over to youtube.com/rev3games, you can watch Conrad and Zach. Zach is our producer of this show. They did a full multiplayer review, and it's up there now. And speaking of that beautiful mustachioed gentleman, you can read Conrad Zimmerman's official written review over at Destructoid.com. It's got an actual score and everything, and I guarantee you it's not going to be a 2.0.
A lot of words in there.
Yep.
We're going to have more videos for you guys tomorrow, but in the meantime, you should go follow us on Twitter. I am at Max Scoville. She is at Tara Longest, and together we are at Detoid Show. We put up a bunch of videos this morning featuring Tara playing with some new Xbox games, including Steel Battalion and Minecraft on the Xbox, so go check those out too.
They're awesome. And yeah, thanks for watching. Probably our biggest review of the year.
Yeah, let us know what you think of the comments.
Yeah.
All right,
Nothing
bye guys.
mean though.